Hello, it's me, Rise! I've done multiple videos in a row about my friends' mains, cause it's fun and all, but now it's time to go back to what I know. We did Protea, Revenant, and now it's time for Dagath. I don't really know when, but I'll be definitely making videos about Valkyr before her rework. I'm gonna keep an archive of how she was before the rework, and then I'll make another one after the rework so we can compare. That could be really interesting, I think. Anyway, let's check Dagath's kit. Passive. When Dagath picks up an energy, health or universal orb, she has a 35% chance to increase its yield by 300%. This does work on any kind of orb, so the normal ones enemies drop, dispensaries orb, etc. When picking up universal orbs, you normally get 25 health and 25 energy. Well, they can become 100 health and 100 energy. Keep in mind both effects are independent. You can get 25 energy and 100 health from the same universal orb, because the passive applies the 35% chance to boost the health and then to the energy, separately. Archon Shards increasing the effectiveness of orbs to work, and multiplicatively, same with mods doing so. So things like Ember Archon Shards, Energizing Shot, Mending Shot and Restorative Bound. First ability, Wyrd Scythe. Summons 7 sort of cycles, spinning around you for about a second until they start seeking enemies at high velocity. The spinning radius increases from 1 meter to 5 meters, and it scales with range. It can go up to 40 meters away while auto-targeting, and it looks like they can go up to 125 meters with infinite punch through. If there's no target, they can go where you were looking at. Each Wyrd Scythe's hit inflicts viral damage and apply a viral status effect, and it slows enemies down, with a cap of 95% slow at 272% strength. Viral status effect increase the damage to health. Third stack doubles your damage. Scythe break loot containers, but if you wanna use it instead of Xaku or Limbo, I commend your bravery. During the second phase, where they're flying again, the Scythe deal 2 times more damage. You can't recast the ability while the Scythe are around you, but when they're flying away you can. Between the spinning phase and the flying phase there's a 0.5 second throw delay. You can recast during this delay, but it will prevent the Scythe already existing from flying away. Wyrd Scythe is Dagath's Subsumed. Its slow effect is nerfed for the Subsumed, which reaches its cap at 71% slow at 272% strength. Doom the Dark Ages. No, of course not, it's just Doom. On cast, Dagath deals viral damage but no status in a 40-degree cone, which staggers enemies and apply Doom. Dealing damage to doomed enemies as Dagath, whether you use your abilities or weapons, will trigger Phantom Wrath, which spawns a sickle above the target's head, and stores 35% of all damage instances dead by Dagath and her weapons for 2 seconds. It scales with strength. Once the 2 seconds are over, or the stored damage is enough to be lethal, the sickle falls upon the target, releasing the stored damage as true damage. This doesn't remove the doomed effect, so you can apply Phantom Wrath effect multiple times in a row, though you can't have multiple sickles at once on the same target. You can have sickles on multiple targets at once. You can increase the percent of your stored damage and reach 100% at 286% strength. Keep in mind the damage that will be stored is the one after all DR is applied. The Phantom Wrath effect isn't shared between targets. Viral status effect does work on the lethal damage, but things like Roar, Rest and Rage and Sentient Wrath won't work. Wyrd Scythe, so Dagath's first ability, spreads Doom pretty well, and it refreshes Doom. Recast has a 1 second cooldown, but when you recast on an already doomed enemy it refreshes the duration. Applying Doom also applies Phantom Wrath, even if you don't attack the target afterwards. Keep in mind that Doom can steal kills from Dagath's weapons and companions, meaning you don't get your stacks like from galvanized mods or arcanes, and the companions won't use Contagious Bound. Third ability, Grave Spirit. On cast, gain 50% critical damage, it scales with strength. On top of that, when you suffer a lethal hit, you turn into your spectral self, leaving you invulnerable for a couple of seconds, which scales with duration. Enemies around you get knocked down as you enter the spectral form. On top of this, you get a 100% dodge chance. This may sound useless since you are invulnerable, but it's actually noticeable in some cases. Like if you wanna use Defy to nuke while in spectral form, you won't be able to stack damage with it, so anything that requires you to get hit won't work. While in spectral form, your shield can't naturally regen, you need to actively do it. Once the invulnerability is over, you enter a 25 seconds cooldown, during which you can't recast 3. The critical damage buff from spectral form is doubled on doomed enemies, and they receive 2 times more damage from Phantom Wrath. For this buff to work, you need Grey Spirit to be active, so when it's grayed out, but it must not be spectral form, otherwise it doesn't work. You just get the initial damage. which means that if you have the augment, you can't proc the double damage from Phantom Wrath. Which means with 100% sickle damage and this Doom plus Grave Spirit strat, you just need 33% damage to one-shot. Which also means with 10 viral stacks plus this, you need 7.76% damage to one-shot any target that doesn't have damage attenuation. Where Spectral Form is active, enemies have a 100% chance to drop an additional health orb on top of their original loot table, so you can end up dropping 2 health orbs per kill, meaning you can comfortably use Health Conversion, Equilibrium, Arcane Pulse and Arcane Blessing. But that also means you can use the yellow shard for effectiveness on health, or the purple shards that act like a budget equilibrium. All of this it synergizes really well with a passive. Now for a silly thing, Arcane Escapist, R4 with 9 stacks, can cover the 25 seconds cooldown, so if you get the 9 stacks while invulnerable, you should be constantly unkillable basically, as long as you stack the arcane while you're invul of course. Augment, Spectral Spirit. On cast, you immediately turn into your spectral form, meaning you get the invul right away, and all the buffs. All the effects from Doom are now also in Grave Spirit, meaning you don't need Doom anymore. It's so super easy to spread Doom too, since you can just cast 1 while in 3 to spread it. On top of that, all your weapons and abilities now spread Doom. Another amazing side of this is that now while the abilities on CD, every kill you get will reduce the cooldown by 1 second. Meaning if you can kill 25 enemies right as the CD starts, it will be over and you can recast the ability. So running Falcor with Dagath, for example, works wonderfully. There are many other options of course. And remember what I said about Arcane Escapist? Well, now it'll be even easier, because if you kill enemies, you don't need as many stacks. Sadly, I won't be able to demonstrate Escapist cheese strat, because mine is only R1. I slack there, I ignored most ETAs. Also, the cooldown doesn't scale with anything. It will be a fixed 25 seconds, and will lose 1 second per kill. Meaning even if your spectral form is like 45 seconds long, you'll still only have a 25 second CD. Which also means that if you have a 13% duration, your invul will last 1.3 seconds, but the CD will be 25 seconds long. I often hear people say you shouldn't remove Doom, because then the double CD increase from doomed enemy in spectral form won't work. I tested this multiple times and never saw any issue with it. So if anyone tells you it's a mistake for the crit damage to remove Doom, well, it's wrong. At least according to everything I tested, and I looked for possible patches but never found any mention of this. Though, since you need the Grey Spirit buff and not the Spectral Form buff, and the Doom ability itself, removing Doom means you don't get the ×2 damage to Phantom Wrath buff. Also a while ago, and for a long time, if you had Wrathful Advance over Doom and Spectral Spirit, the crit damage and crit chance from both would constantly increase each other, and if you kept going you could hit consistent damage cap with any melee in the game. Often it wasn't really damage cap, it was a display error, but your damage would still increase constantly, and you could in fact hit real damage cap if you kept going for long enough. Well, I don't know if it actually hit level cap, but I know it could keep increasing to the point it could one-shot anything. Fourth ability, Rakhali's Cavalry. Dagath summons 5 spectral horses in cavalry charge formation, 5 meters away from her. During the 1.5 seconds casting, Dagath is invulnerable. It is affected by casting speed, so the more casting speed you have, the shorter the invulnerability. Once the casting is over, the horses will charge forward, dealing big viral damage, with status and stagger every 0.15 seconds to everything they do. When I say horse, I do mean Gaith, but you get it. Also, while in the air, the horses will follow the distance of the player's camera until they reach the horizontal surface, and they'll go through vertical obstacles. On top of that, doomed enemies also lose their defense every time they get hit by the 4. You need 286% strength to remove their defense in a single hit, but keep in mind the horses will hit multiple times, meaning you will fully strip with way less strength than that. Range doesn't affect the 4 in any way, but duration affects how far the horses will go. Well, for how long they will go. One last thing, I believe it's the ability with the biggest return value for its damage in the game. And you can go super far with it, which is pretty cool and gives me nice brain chemicals. Of course that doesn't mean it's the strongest ability, it's just the return value that's big. Recap. Passive. Easy energy and health economy. Wyrd Scythe. Applies Varrow, spread Doom. It deals some DPS and it's a great slow. Doom. Increase your crit damage if 3 is active. CC. More damage instances. Execute true damage and helps with 4 defense trip. Grave Spirit. Death gating. Invulnerability. Crit damage buff. Guaranteed health orb drops. All the benefits from her too. Rakhali's Cavalry. Acceptable nuke. Defense trip. Invulnerability. Helminth. You don't get to farm more Dagath cause no way I'll buy beacons instead of us4s, and people ain't running it anymore, so you can't expect my opinion on many builds. Though I still have some ideas that could potentially work. We'll do the same as always, how to make more damage with abilities first. This time I won't recommend things that apply viral or armor strip since Dagath does it really well already. Though if you want it as a weapon platform, running armor strip can still help, since usually when you armor strip with the 4 the enemies die. I can also recommend damage vulnerability abilities, so Rest and Rage, Sentient Wrath, Petrify. Just a disclaimer, when I wrote the video I didn't know about Doom being capped at 35% damage if you didn't have Doom, so I got all my subsumes over Doom. But if you want the capped at 100% Phantom Wrath, you need Doom. Though for the 100% Phantom Wrath with a 2x damage multiplier, so 200% Phantom Wrath, you'll need to remove the augment. So you need both Doom and the non-invulnerable Grave Speed 4, meaning you'll have to replace the 1, which gives viral stacks, or the 4 which nukes, defense strip and gives invulnerability. An important thing to remember, viral works on the Phantom Wrath damage, meaning you get more damage from 10 viral stacks than Doom plus Grave Spirit, without the augment. But you can apply viral with weapons, a subsume or a companion, in which case you can remove the 1. So it's a game of pick your poison basically. There's no right or wrong choice here, it depends on playstyle. Now in terms of damage spread, you can run Breach Surge. Since it's a weapon ability, it will be affected by Dagath's crit damage buff, effectively applying twice if you're using a weapon, so once on top of the weapon, which will directly buff the Breach Surge damage, and then it will also affect Breach Surge itself, as if it was a 4x multiplier. Tesla Nervous with Tesla Bank. For weapon platforming, you can go for the usual, so Nourish, Roar, Shock with Shock Trooper, Smite with Mimetic Fusion, Tempest Barrage with its augment, Xata, or Mirthful Advance for a melee platforming setup, which is really nice, since she has a massive crit damage buff. Well, in both cases, you can run Silence. It helps with keeping violence at bay, but also grouping abilities, since the 4 does not have a big width and some weapons need grouping. In terms of survivability, my favorite would be Defy if you go to level cap, so you can use it once or twice while your invulnerability is on cooldown, and boom, you're good to go again. But apart from that, there's not much to do. Something that's more silly than good is running Aqua Blades with its augment, alongside Wyrd Scythe. For the Rev propaganda, you can run Reeve, since Dagath applies viral real well and Reeve gives invulnerability, health and shield regen, and a way to escape damage, so it's pretty comfy with Dagath, both in terms of damage and also survivability. Another thing, don't forget about the executing cycle, meaning if your redirected damage is 100%, one Reeve will deal 2x more damage than it says, in theory, so you need less strength. I believe it is 304% strength, 1 viral stack, but Dagath is one applies many stacks, so you need way less strength than this to one shot, especially with the cycle. Invigorations. Strength is my favorite for the big 4 damage, but mostly for the increased crit damage, and if you run a subsume, like Wrathful Advance, it also gives 2 tiers of crit, so it has a really big value there. Next one is Duration, for the 3rd invul, which will allow it to last more than a whole minute. And it's super nice if you run it with Defy too, since its invul also scales with Duration, but also Reef, although it's much shorter. If you wanna spam the 4, running Efficiency is nice too, that way you can still use the usual Blind Rage and still spam it. If you know Shield Gate, then you might not want that though, unless you run Catalyzing Shield. Range Invigoration is interesting too, to spread doom, but honestly you don't really need it. Now, unlike most frames I introduced, the weapon Invigorations will actually be interesting. The critical chance ones go super well with crit damage. The Energy Max one is also nice if you wanna use 4 often and still wanna Shield Gate. Shards. Red ones for strength are pretty cool. You can also go for the duration ones for increased invulnerability duration. If you're going full melee platform, going with the purple shard for melee crit damage sounds good too. You can run casting speed, but since it affects the 4 invulnerability duration, I'm not a fan of them. Though if you don't care about this invulnerability, go ahead and have fun. The usual parkour velocity shards are always nice too, of course, though make sure you can actually use them properly, cause often when I see someone glaze the parkour velocity shard, they can't control the speed and lose more time due to them hitting walls. Builds. First, ignore the additional duration I have. It's 75% from my shards. It's good of course, but if you don't have the 5 shards you don't have this. That'd be my average build. It mostly has duration for the invulnerability and some strength for the crit damage, slow and 4. As always, Prime Sure-Footed isn't needed, it's just more comfy. If you don't have it, you really shouldn't sweat about it. You can run without a augment, but it removes a lot of comfort. Some silly builds you can do is an health sync one, since you can comfortably get all health conversion stacks. Helminth builds. To be fair, for almost all Helminth build, I run a very similar build to the base one. Mostly duration, then some strength. There's a couple variants though, like for the Breachurge one. You can sacrifice a bit of strength or duration for range, like replacing narrow-minded by stretch. Same for grouping ability. For the Defy build, you got multiple options. You can go for max duration, that way you just use it to be unkillable, while the cooldown is active. But you can also go with more range, so replacing narrow-minded with stretch again, to nuke everything and make the cooldown go back to 0 real quick. Though keep in mind, this doesn't really work at the intended levels. For the silence build, what I like to do is have at max 100% range, and less is cool too, because I'd use it to apply the CC to the enemies as they enter the area, so the smaller your silence, the easier it is to reapply it this effect. And if your range is too big, you'll need to travel a lot more to make the enemies leave the range. Overall, I'd recommend Subsumed over her too, if you're running her augment, otherwise you can Subsumed over anything you don't like. I believe the 4 is a popular Subsumed slot too. But yeah, if you have her augment, you don't lose anything from removing her too. Subsumed Wyrd Scythe. It's definitely not one of the Subsumes I'd recommend the most, but it still has some nice uses. First, it applies Varrow quite well, not on many enemies, unless you group, but still, it being able to apply Varrow means it goes well with Subsumes we mentioned, like Rave, so on Revenant, but also on frames that are often in melee range, like Valkyrie. Excal Savagoth, but since it has a precision throw or whatever, you can also use it from a distance. It will most likely prime one dude, but if it doesn't get all stacks, that will be surprising. Let's not forget that it also got a nice slow, so you can use it with frames that are already slow to make the slow even bigger, so like Valkyrie again, Savagoth, but also Xaku. But if you need, you can use it to cancel undesired speed effects, like with Equinox's too, which boosts enemy speed. I think it's pretty interesting with Silence too, since it will make the CC last even longer. Weaknesses. With those 3, you can't benefit from the crit damage buff while on CD. Without her augment, the 3 CD is super slow, meaning you have to build for shield gating like any other frame, making it questionably useful. Her 4th width isn't really good. Recasting removes the already existing horses, it's not really efficient. If you wanna get a super high kill power. Cosmetics. Maybe we'll get her prime before GTA 6 on PC. Releases spring 2027 possible. I mean for Dagath, prime. Opinion. She's a really interesting Warframe, which also is super comfy, especially with her augment. She is super strong too, with an amazing buff for quick weapons. Pairing this with melee Doughty are things like Sestride Garden is choosy, especially if you pair it with Wrathful Advance for Doughty. With Roar, Burston does a wonderful job, but also with Xata, maybe especially with Xata. And I do love some good Burston gunplay, gonna be one of my favorite encounters. I just kinda wished her 4th width would get affected by range, but I definitely recommend her and hope that she will receive more love. Thank you for watching. Now, you're Sadie Adler. Remember to have fun. Adios.